Welcome. This is the second in a series of modules that will present the components of the annual school planning process. In this module, we will explore the root cause analysis, which will allow annual school planning teams to determine possible root causes of identified areas of need. The annual school planning process has 4 phases: comprehensive needs assessment, root cause analysis, annual school plan, and implementation and progress monitoring. In the previous module, you learned about the comprehensive needs assessment, which includes both quantitative and qualitative data analysis and a qualitative rubric. In this module, we will turn our attention to the root cause analysis. This is the step in the process where we will analyze our data and identify ways we can take action to improve our school's outcomes. In the previous module, we learned about the components of the comprehensive needs assessment. Both the data analysis and the needs assessment rubric offer valuable data that establish baseline facts about the school. The data analysis section focuses on quantitative data, while the needs assessment offers a qualitative perspective about the school. Both of these sections will allow us to help develop questions about the data, needs assessment, and prior interventions in order to identify areas of need. If you have not already done so, we encourage you to take some time with your team to review the completed data analysis and needs assessment rubric and generate a list of questions about your school's performance, such as, why has our math SGP dropped each year for the past 3 years? Once you have identified these key questions, we will be ready to explore these performance challenges and begin to identify possible solutions. Previously, we used data to provide the story of where a school is now and where it is expected to be. The data analysis helps to identify the school's area of need. Once the needs are isolated, a root cause analysis explains why the needs exist. In many ways, the root cause analysis is the most important step in the annual school planning process. Only once we understand why these challenges exist can we begin to address them. This leads to the development of strategies and approaches to best address the school's identified needs. Goal setting can be powerful when it is properly informed and targeted, but can miss the mark if we set goals that do not focus on the areas of need and include strategies and interventions that address the underlying issues. The root cause analysis is the step that allows us to move from data to action by eliciting the underlying issues that are producing a certain set of outcomes, and consequently, what strategies or evidence-based practices will be needed to improve our results. Why complete a root cause analysis? The root cause analysis is the process by which we move from data to action. Schools tend to have a lot of data, both quantitative and qualitative. In the preceding sections, we captured the most important summary data about the school. This will tell us at a high level what is happening. The root cause analysis will dig into why this is happening. First, we will use a questioning process to narrow our focus to the most significant and actionable issues facing the school. Often, the first answer, why something is happening, is too broad. So we will keep asking, why is that happening, until we reach an actionable cause, which leads us to the most immediate problem. Once we have asked why several times, we hope to identify the underlying issues within our locus of control that we will attempt to address. To understand the root cause analysis process, let's use a real-world example. The picture on the screen shows an unfortunate fellow sitting on his couch more than ankle deep in water. First, we need to consider our data. What data does our friend have at his disposal? Well, some of the possible data he might consider would be the depth of the water, which might indicate the source or severity of the problem, the clarity of the water. Is it dirty water from a sewer backup or clean water from a pipe or hot water heater? The temperature of the water. Is this coming from a hot water pipe? The direction of the water. Is it flowing from one direction, bubbling up from below, or dripping from above? The weather outside. Was a heavy rain forecast? The location within the house or building. Is this in a basement or perhaps on the second floor? The age of the pipes or fixtures, such as the hot water heater. Is this possibly a failure due to aging equipment? You may notice that each of these data points leads logically to a question. This should be true of your school data as well. In addition to these questions, we should also ask about prior interventions. In this example, has the room flooded before? If so, what was done about it? How effective was that solution? Once we have asked and answered each of these data-informed questions, we may be closer to identifying the root cause of the problem. In our example, we can surmise that there is one clear root cause of this flooding. In the world of school improvement, it is possible that even with all available data, we may not settle on one single root cause. However, by continuing to ask ourselves why, we will likely narrow down the underlying issues, and from that narrowed list, we can select one that will be the focus of our interventions. In some cases, there may be several underlying issues that contribute to a particular area of need, but for our purposes, it is acceptable to choose one of those issues for our focused interventions. Trying to do too many things at once may result in interventions that are too broad and don't solve any of the underlying issues. Before we develop interventions, we must ensure that the root cause we wish to address is sufficiently narrow and within our locus of control. If we find that the root cause of our example is that the entire neighborhood is flooded due to a hurricane, then the problem may be too big for us to solve. Just as if we find that the root cause of frequent student tardiness is related to morning traffic around the school, that may be a problem that's beyond the scope of the school. We may, however, find success with more narrow solutions. Even in a hurricane, we may be able to use sandbags to limit the spread of water to other rooms or move valuables to higher ground. Even if the buses arrive late due to traffic, we can vary the daily school schedule to mitigate the impact of lost instructional time. Once we have selected a root cause, we can proceed to developing interventions, which we will explore in the next module. Now that we've walked through a real-world example, let's try this with actual school data. We will use the same example page from the school performance report that we examined in the data analysis module. The example shows the Climate and Environment tab that provides data for chronic absenteeism. A table is presented that shows the percentage of students in grades K through 12 who are chronically absent school-wide and by subgroup. Also shown is a graph that displays the percentage of K through 12 students school-wide by the number of days they were absent during the school year. Data analysis helps us to identify what is happening, but now we must determine why it is happening and whether this is an actionable issue. In the last module, we discussed certain trends. Almost every subgroup met its target for chronic absenteeism, but the Asian Pacific Islander subgroup and the English learner subgroup had slightly higher rates of chronic absenteeism than the school as a whole and did not meet their targets. Overall chronic absenteeism was near the state average. Now we must dig into this data further. If at all possible, we would like to use multiple sources of data to inform our planning. When we triangulate data in this way, we develop a more informed picture of the area of need. Here we see a table named N size of population at school by subgroup. There are two columns, one labeled subgroup and one labeled N size. We may find that one subgroup that exceeded the school average in chronic absenteeism has a very small N size. And if we look at this subgroup N size chart, we notice that the N size by subgroup is as follows. White students have 159 members, Hispanic students are 234, Black students are 95, Asian students 12, free or reduced price lunch eligible students 475, students with disabilities 45, and LEP students 125. We noted that the Asian subgroup missed its target, but find in the table that it has an N size of only 12. This does not mean we should ignore the issue, but when conducting school-wide goal setting and planning, we may want to select a challenge that will impact a greater number of students. All students should be included in interventions for chronic absenteeism. However, interventions may be differentiated by intensity or strategy, depending upon attendance rates and root causes that may be specific to a subgroup. Let's say the team decides that one area of need is to decrease the chronic absenteeism rate of English learners. We would then want to better understand the dynamics of this challenge. We might ask our stakeholder team, why are English learners chronically absent more than the district average? We then want to think through all possible reasons why this may be occurring. Almost a brainstorming exercise, but informed by our knowledge of our school and students. Some of these possible causes may be factors beyond the control of the school, so we will focus only on those causes that we, as educators, can impact. If we find a particular cause, such as a spike in absences at the end of the school year, we might then have to ask why again to determine the underlying cause. Once we ascertain an actionable root cause or causes, we can begin to identify effective strategies or interventions. Our questioning process and our knowledge of the dynamics of the school year might lead us to ask if there is variation month to month in chronic absenteeism. We might begin by looking at school-wide data. The bar graph displayed is labeled chronic absenteeism by month. The x-axis displays the months, and the y-axis displays the percentage of students chronically absent each month. The bar graph shows the following chronic absenteeism data. In September, our school-wide average was 9%. In October, 8%. November, 11%. December, 14%. January, 15%. February, 10%. March, 8%. April, 8%. May, 9%. And June, 12%. The average chronic absenteeism for the year was 10%. The graph indicates a spike in chronic absenteeism in September, December, January, and June. But this data alone does not tell us if these seasonal effects are school-wide or more pronounced with our target subgroup, so we need to dig deeper. This chart digs down to subgroup performance in chronic absenteeism, with the column heading displaying all of the subgroups and the row heading displaying the months, with the average for the year at the bottom of each column. By digging down to the subgroup level, we find, as indicated by the highlighted red text, that the spikes in chronic absenteeism in the highest months, September, December, January, and June, are largely the result of dramatic increases in chronic absenteeism amongst English learners. Now we have concrete data on which we can take action. Once again, we ask, why? Why might these variations occur? The annual planning team may determine that based on these questions, more data are needed. Teachers of students who are absent during these months might be able to confirm or eliminate extended travel as a root cause. The principal or school secretary or nurse might shed some light on the registration and attendance patterns occurring at the beginning of the school year. Based on this information, we may be able to isolate an actionable root cause on which we can act. We will capture our intended strategies on the root cause analysis form. In the next module, we will learn how to set meaningful SMART goals and concrete action steps. In the next step in our process, we will plan intervention strategies that we think will best address the school's identified areas of focus. SMART goals and SMART action steps are how we will implement and evaluate the interventions. We already have a head start on this process because we have identified two key questions already. What is the immediate, narrowly defined, and actionable problem that we are trying to solve? What strategies might we employ to solve this problem? These strategies will inform our action steps, and the problem we are addressing will help us to craft an impact goal that is SMART: specific, measurable, ambitious and achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Thank you for your attention.